Tonight, heavy traffic in the showrooms. Sales reports out today show the Cash for Clunkers program gave U.S. automakers a much-needed jump start. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a scare in the air.
I hit my head on the light above and it broke the light out and was showered in glass.
Dozens are injured when a Continental Airlines flight from Rio hits severe turbulence. Doctors and researchers say we need to change our diets. Kids need more vitamin D, and everyone more fish oil. And a wounded warrior fights his toughest battle, getting help from the VA.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. Americans are buying cars again with some help from the federal government. Detroit's Big Three today reported their sales number for July. Ford posted the biggest improvement over June with showroom sales up 27%. Chrysler's were up 16%. General Motors up 8%. And Cynthia Bowers tells us it was the government's Cash for Clunkers rebate program that drew many of the buyers into the showroom.
Hi, how are you?
At his suburban Chicago Ford dealership, sales manager Mario Sosnowski is seeing something he hasn't seen in a long time.
This entire lot used to be full of a new car inventory. That's what we have left.
An empty lot and a jam-packed showroom floor.
Starting from 8, 9 in the morning, we were here till midnight every day because the program, because the excitement.
He just did the most July business he's done in 5 years.
I sold 17 cars.
He says many buyers like the fact that Ford did not take a government bailout, but it is the Cash for Clunkers program that is the real driving force.
We think Cash for Clunkers was worth about $1 million in annualized sales.
2009 could see 11.5 million vehicles sold, which sounds good in this economy, but the auto industry used to sell 16 million vehicles a year. GM had its first sales increase in 10 months, but its numbers were still down 19% from last July. Chrysler sales were up from June, but still down 9% from last year. Ford is the clear winner here. Its sales are up 2.3% over last July, making it the only automaker in 2 years to see a year-to-year gain.
Ford also credits that annual sales jump to its product line, which includes the reintroduction of an old favorite, the car that set sales records for more than a decade, the Ford Taurus.
Customers are really going to rally around that, and that's going to be a big thing for Ford from a sales perspective.
And the all-new Ford Taurus show.
With a brand new ad campaign built around the revamped Taurus, Ford dealers hope to keep July's momentum going, even if the Cash for Clunkers program runs out of gas. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Niles, Illinois.
The Cash for Clunkers program is successful and it's in trouble, perhaps a victim of its own success. So many Americans have taken advantage of it. It's just about out of money. And Anthony Mason tells us the pressure is on for Congress to fill her up.
Cash for Clunkers will crash, the government claims, if another $2 billion in funding, already approved by the House, is not approved by the Senate before its 4-week recess starts Friday.
If it doesn't happen this week, it's unlikely that we'll make it to the weekend with a program that can continue.
But there is resistance in the Senate.
We estimated this would cost $1 billion. Now they're saying we need $2 billion more. Our children and grandchildren can't afford to make these car dealers well right now.
And others are questioning the program's value to the auto industry and the economy.
I would argue that we would be better off actually not spending the extra money.
Jeremy Anwyl, CEO of the auto website Edmunds.com, says car sales were already starting to pick up on their own.
To me, this is the sales equivalent of a sugar rush. It makes you feel good for a little while, but then when you come back down, you pay for it.
The Cash for Clunkers program has been driving shoppers into showrooms. But according to one research firm, Cash for Clunkers has so far accounted for only 105,000 sales, less than half industry estimates, which would mean the program may still have more than enough money to meet demand without more funding. What's more, there are doubts about whether many of the clunkers traded in actually meet the strict standards of the program.
There's a lot of discussion and a lot of debate as to the veracity or the reliability of a lot of these deals.
The Transportation Department says some 80% of the vehicles traded in are pickup trucks or SUVs, and that the average vehicle purchase gets nearly 10 miles a gallon better fuel economy than the one traded in for scrap. But more than half of the cash in the Cash for Clunkers program is going to buy foreign cars. No question, consumers are getting a deal, but some analysts say we may be paying people to trade in cars now that they would have had to trade in soon anyway. Katie?
And Anthony, Americans are not only buying cars again, they're buying stocks again. The summer rally continued today with the Dow Industrials gaining nearly 115 points to close at its highest level in 9 months. And in the wider market, the S&P 500 closed above 1,000. Anthony, the market's flying high. What is that telling you?
The market seems to be telling us it's expecting the recovery to be stronger than we expected. I mean, the NASDAQ crossed 2,000 today for the first time since October. The S&P 500 crossed 1,000 for the first time since November. Now take a look at this. If you go back to the low for the S&P 500 back in March, a very apocalyptic 666, we are actually up 50% in less than 5 months in the S&P 500. And economists that I talked to believe this rally is for real, that stocks could still go higher from here. So hopefully it's going to get easier opening that 401k statement.
Good news 2 nights in a row. I don't know what we're going to do, Anthony.
No extra charge.
Thank you very much. And one other financial note tonight from the Postal Service. Now, this isn't such good news. It's in so much money trouble, it could lose close to $7 billion this year. It's now considering closing hundreds of post offices. The agency has sent a list of nearly 700 potential candidates to the Independent Postal Regulatory Commission for review, and more could be added. In other news tonight, it's the reason flight crews always tell you to keep that seatbelt on. A Continental jet on an overnight flight from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil to Houston hit severe turbulence without any warning. Passengers and crew literally hit the ceiling and dozens were injured. The plane made an emergency landing in Miami and 15 people were taken to the hospital. Nancy Cordes picks up the story from there.
Continental Flight 128 touched down in Miami just before dawn, carrying dozens of bruised, gashed, and bloodied passengers.
All of a sudden, the plane just kind of like takes a dip and rises up, and you see people going off their seats, people screaming.
The Boeing 767 had hit a pocket of turbulence so violent and unexpected that flight attendants in the aisles were flung against the ceiling, and a few passengers were knocked unconscious.
I hit my head on the light above and it broke the light out and was showered in glass.
Those with the most severe injuries were lowered to the ground using catering trucks, then rushed to the hospital. The rest were treated at the airport.
Everybody bumped head against it twice because it came down again and very sharp and
It happened high above the Caribbean. A doctor on board did what he could during the hour it took to divert to Miami. Continental says the fasten seatbelt light was on, but many of the sleeping passengers on the overnight flight either didn't see it or ignored it.
Nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden the plane just dropped.
Each year, approximately 58 air travelers in the U.S. are injured by turbulence while not wearing their seatbelts. This computer simulation created for the FAA shows how much more dangerous turbulence can be for an unbelted passenger on the right than the belted passenger on the left.
That's why the airlines recommend you wear your seatbelt loosely at all times, even if the light is off, because even the most sophisticated equipment can't predict every patch of rough air, Katie.
Terrifying story. Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thank you. In health news, new recommendations tonight about our diets. Heart doctors say we need more fish oil, and we'll have more about that in a moment. But first, surprising new research about vitamin D. It says 7 out of 10 children and young adults are not getting enough of it. Dr. Jennifer Ashton is here now with more on both of these important stories. And Jennifer, let me start with the vitamin D. What happens when kids don't get enough of it?
Katie, vitamin D levels when they're low have been associated with high blood pressure and high blood sugar levels and lowering of the HDL, which is the good cholesterol. And the thinking is that all of those things put together may put a child at future risk of cardiovascular disease.
So how much vitamin D does a child need? I know you can get some from the sun, but that, of course, poses its own risk. Can kids get enough from their daily diets?
Well, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, they need 400 international units a day, and that's through the teenage years. They can get enough from food, fortified foods such as milk, cereal, fish. or orange juice. But if they're not eating enough of those foods, you should probably ask your child's pediatrician whether they need a vitamin D supplement or a multivitamin with 400 units of vitamin D in it.
This is why our parents made us take cod liver oil
That's right.
when we were kids. Meanwhile, there are new recommendations out today that suggest we're all not getting enough fish oil in our diets. How much more do we need than what we're getting?
Well, there's strong evidence now, Katie, that we need two types of omega-3 fatty acids called EPA and DHA, and that you can help prevent heart disease. And if you have heart disease and you take supplemental amounts, it might reduce your risk of death. For healthy adults, they need 500 milligrams a day. And for anyone with known heart problems, they should probably get 800 to 1,000 milligrams a day. Now, most people can get that from their diet if they consume 2 oily fish meals a week, so something like salmon or tuna. If they're not getting that in their diet, they should go to a supplement. And again, Katie, this is now probably a good idea for everyone, not just those with heart disease.
All right. Dr. Jennifer Ashton, thanks very much. I'm going to take those recommendations seriously. In other health news tonight, eye-opening findings about what is inside our medicine cabinets. 1 in 10 Americans over the age of 6 is taking antidepressants. Now, that number has doubled in just 1 decade, from just over 13 million to 27 million. Researchers say the increase is due in part to people using antidepressants for problems other than depression, like back pain, anxiety, even headaches. Coming up next here on the CBS Evening News, sealed with a kiss, Iran's top leader confirms the presidential election results, but we have not heard the last from the protesters. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton called on Iran today to return 3 American tourists reportedly under arrest there. Shane Bauer, Joshua Fatal, and Sarah Shord were hiking last Friday in the mountains of northern Iraq when it's believed they accidentally crossed into Iran. Meanwhile, in Tehran, President Ahmadinejad's re-election was made official today, despite continuing protests that the vote was rigged. Elizabeth Palmer has the latest.
It was staged as the start of a new political chapter. Iran's supreme leader today endorsed Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's second presidential term. But cracks in the leadership are showing. Several prominent clergy boycotted the ceremony. And the supreme leader avoided Ahmadinejad's move to kiss his hand as is customary, leading to an awkward peck on the shoulder instead. Over the weekend, the regime staged another unconvincing show. A mass trial of about 100 prominent reformists arrested after the disputed election in June, including Mohammed Ali Abtahi, a former vice president whom CBS first spoke to in 2005 about his liberal blogging. On Saturday, Abtahi appeared gaunt and worn after 6 weeks in jail. He's just one of thousands arrested during the post-election protests, including students, lawyers, and peaceful demonstrators. Human rights groups agree more than 300 remain in detention, and at least 30 are dead, like 19-year-old student protester Sohrab Arabi. The fate of an American scholar, Kian Tajbakhsh, and many others remains unknown.
My heart goes out to everybody.
The Princeton academic Hala Esfandiari, who spent 3 months in a Tehran jail in 2007, knows what those detained are facing.
I was alone in a cell by myself, 24 hours a day with lights on all the time.
But all the repression and arrests haven't crushed Iran's reform movement, which is planning more protests in the days to come, aiming to weaken an already nervous and divided regime. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
Here in this country, more than 100 people were sickened by dangerous fumes today in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It happened at a waste transfer station where trash is sorted. Several workers passed out, then first responders, including paramedics, got sick. 2 people are in critical condition, and authorities don't know what chemicals were in the trash. Coming up next, healthy lungs taking over the debate over healthcare reform. The debate over health care reform is not limited to the halls of Congress. Voices are being heard all over the country, voices of protest, and they're growing louder. Here's Wyatt Andrews.
It's happening almost everywhere. Democrats are trying to defend health care reform.
It is unacceptable to me for somebody to...
Angry protesters in Philadelphia shouted down both the HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius and Senator Arlen Specter.
Health care for every American.
On Saturday in Texas, demonstrators against what they called government-run health care surrounded and then followed Democratic Congressman Lloyd Doggett out to his car. The crowds are partly the result of conservative websites asking for turnout at town halls, including 3 tonight in Virginia, Mississippi, and South Carolina. Hundreds of events by both Democrats and Republicans are being targeted in every state. But the turnouts also reflect real fear over the increased taxes.
Stop spending our money!
And government controls that are part of the health bills being considered in Congress.
They know that that means somebody's taxes are going to eventually be used to pay for this. And they're worried that that's their taxes.
Political analysts say Democrats face a very tough August because beyond the shoutdowns, anti-reform forces have also mounted phone campaigns.
It's all the calls that are flooding in to the district offices of members of Congress. And I bet that a lot of these calls will be negative.
Avoiding this kind of uproar is partly why Democrats wanted to pass health reform before the August recess. Democrats are now out there without a final bill to defend, but facing opponents trying to kill what they call Obamacare with a show of August heat. Katie?
Wyatt Andrews reporting from Washington tonight. In Los Angeles today, a judge gave Michael Jackson's mother permanent custody of his children. The judge also granted monthly stipends. The amount wasn't disclosed to 79-year-old Katherine Jackson and each of the 3 children. The hearing today ended without a ruling on whether Mrs. Jackson can mount a challenge for control of her son's estate. Coming up next, a wounded warrior's toughest battle with doctors at the VA. This was a very difficult day for the family of Navy pilot Michael Scott Spiker. A spokesperson says there's tremendous sadness over news that his remains were found in the Iraqi desert and identified. Spiker's F-18 was shot down in the earliest hours of the first Iraq War in 1991. His fate remained a mystery all these years until yesterday, when the Pentagon confirmed he was killed. Spiker was 33 when his plane went down. But while the military never gave up the search for Captain Spiker, some wounded warriors say they've been let down by a VA system that provides anything but the best care. David Martin now with one Marine story.
Casey Owens wasn't expected to live after he lost both legs in Iraq. But he made it out of this vehicle alive and to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where we first met him in October of 2004. Everyone would agree the U.S. government owes Casey the best possible medical care. No one who hears his story could say he got it.
I don't know why, just depressed, just crying a lot, feeling down, just feeling hopeless.
He said that to the latest doctor he turned to in his desperate search for the help he was not getting from the Veterans Administration.
That's a very discouraging thing for me because, I mean, that's what they're, I did my part, and so their part, is to help heal us, and I feel they failed me.
All he ever wanted to be was a Marine. Even after he was wounded, he donned his dress blues for President Bush's second inaugural. But the amputation on his right leg kept failing, and the VA told him he would need a 4th operation to repair the stump.
What they offered me was the same surgery that had failed 3 times before.
Each surgery meant more of his right leg had to be amputated.
I didn't have much more in my leg to give.
He wanted a different procedure.
So I did research on my own and found a doctor, which took 6 months of approval to get.
His mother says he spent those 6 months with a raw stump, just waiting.
He was in excruciating pain. He's laying on a bed watching TV or staring at walls.
Finally, he got the operation and, he says, a personal apology from President Bush for the delay. He was up on 2 legs, but still searching for treatment of the wound you can't see, the brain injury.
Having a hard time getting my thoughts together and focusing, getting really irritable.
Well, that's pretty classic brain injury.
What I'm told.
But that's not what the VA told him.
I've gone to the VA, complained, but it's usually,
just shrugged off as either sinus headaches or migraines or stress.
Once again, on his own and with money from private charities, he came to this small medical center outside New Orleans, where Dr. Paul Harch uses pressurized oxygen chambers to treat brain-injured vets.
The theory is that a pulse of a high level of oxygen can energize damaged cells and stimulate tissue growth and improvement in neurological function.
You ready? Good to go? It's an old-fashioned treatment originally developed for deep-sea divers suffering from the bends. But Harch is having encouraging results with the small number of vets he's treated so far.
Cognitively, they're improving. Their quality of life is improving. They feel better.
Don't feel so scatterbrained. Able to collect my thoughts a lot easier, not get lost in the middle of a sentence like I had been.
Casey now plans to start college in the fall.
Free at last!
And he had to do it on his own. David Martin, CBS News, New Orleans.
And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.